I was always talking about the elephant in the room without realizing that's what I was doing, much
Hmm.
to every horror, you know. Because that, you know, when there's an awareness that you haven't acknowledged as awareness, you think everyone else knows what you know, and then you realize they don't.
Yeah.
So that, you know, that was always interesting. But when I was traveling a lot, you know, like in Europe, for example, there's a lot of places that have time bleeds.
Mm.
And so I would be able to see 5 and 6 and 7 layers of time at once when I'd be walking down the street. And that was wild. Like sometimes I was like, what? You know, like,
Thank you for coming. Thank you for staying. I'm here to share with you the beautiful transmissions from the walls of my cavernous heart and to witness the great frequency shift that we are moving into as a collective and the beautiful deep work that we are doing as we glide into the age of Aquarius. This is the Liminal Frequencies podcast. Let's go. Hello, my friends. Thank you for joining us. I love this reference to the elephant in the room, this mythical creature that often is in our periphery that only we can see. And I'm really excited for our interview today. First, I want to share with you some exciting new things. I have put together a Patreon. So if you enjoy my work, you enjoy my recordings, please check that out. I'm offering a series of work on the crystalline brain, which is inspired by my work with manual therapy of the brain and working with guided meditations so that we can help to unlock potentials that we have in our brain. And I'm offering some sound bath recordings and guided meditations for you guys to enjoy. So please check that out and consider contribution to the Patreon. And that way I can keep this work going. And today I'm really excited to speak with Lisa Murray. And Lisa is an intuitive creation activator. She brings new creation possibilities to wise soul connected women who have an original body of work to deliver Earthside. She's an author of Stop Waiting, Start Creating, and Living Beyond Burnout. She is frequency obsessed, neurodiverse, 1/3 manifesting generator, which is, I call it neurospicy, but neurodiverse is a beautiful bouquet of flavors that we can embody as human beings living on this planet. And so I'm really excited to drop into her experience with different devices that work with our frequencies. And we get a little bit into the spiritual and the woo woo as well. And we talk about her work with creating art for children, the mythical dragon creations that she's been working with. And I think it's important to just let that part of ourselves, that childlike creator, grow. I have a story about the elephant in the room. I have this elephant onesie that somebody gave me, and whenever I wore it, it seems like I was stating the obvious. I was the elephant in the room. And this one woman, I saw her and I asked her if her hair was red, and she was like, you have no idea. I'm a blonde. I've been masquerading as a blonde, but I'm really a redhead. And I was like, I can't see with these red glasses. I don't know what color your hair is. But it seemed like when we play that role of addressing the things that are hidden in the shadows, it's an audacious thing to do. People don't necessarily like it. But here we are, speaking our truth, being a little neurospicy. So thanks for your part in that. And let's blow some bubbles and get into the silliness of this beautiful show. Let's dive in. I'm so excited to welcome to the Liminal Frequencies podcast, Lisa.
Hi, Julian.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And hi, everyone who's listening.
So I'd love for us to dive right in on how you got involved in working with frequencies and the healing arts.
Oh, well, that's probably a long story. Let's see what I can do to keep it shortish. So, I think the first thing to say is that I was brought up with energy, like with intuition, with energy from a very young age. And I think in my adult life, I dipped in and out of it for quite a long time. And then when I was about 40, I went through the whole midlife crisis, burnout. It was the third lot of burnout. And I quit my job, my corporate job, all that stuff, and really was very focused on going more into the healing areas because I can see that that was what I needed to do, for myself and for the world. So that's been quite a long time now. And about probably 3 years ago, um, it was really interesting. So my dad loves all the gadgets. He's really into all the fun things, and he came home one day and he's like, I went to this group today and we tried this new healing wand. And do you want to try it? I think you'd like it. I was like, sure, I'll try anything, right? And so I went to this lady's place and tried out a terahertz wand. And I was mind blown, like, because I had a lot of rotator cuff injuries, stuff like that. And literally, there was always on my right shoulder pain that, like, it's been there for 25 years. One session and it was gone. And so that, like, for my mind, I was just like, what? Is that even possible? And so that kind of started quite a big journey. And we ultimately ended up being stockists in Australia for that product for a couple of years with me and my sister and my brother. And so we ran that business. But then there came a point where let's just say the company's values and our values differed. I'm going to just say that. And so we made a choice to finish. And in the meantime, I had come across via a resonance scanner. Now, amongst all of this, I've always been working with energy, right? But the frequency stuff, I've been really, probably this last 3 years, it's been really in my world in much bigger ways. I mean, there was always things like sound healing and, the fun things like that. But that really, I'm going to call what I would call the hardcore frequency healing stuff, only this last 3 years. And so when I got this bioresonance scanner, I was like, again, mind blown by what it could do, because, you can put your voice in there and it will listen to the 10,000 tones and then balance out what you need. And so that's quite extraordinary.
So tell us a little bit more about the wand, and then maybe we can dive more into the scanner as well.
So terahertz is like, in a way, the Earth's frequency, our body's frequency. Now, of course, in our body, we have lots of different frequencies, but terahertz is a range, and there's lots and lots of studies about its benefits. Let's say that, because we have to be very careful not to make any claims, okay? So with the terahertz one thing that it does do very well, though, is activate the body's self-healing capacities. And so the shoulder improvement was just the first thing. If I was wanding on the top of my head, I was having the wildest meditation experiences. And so there was all these different things coming from this wand and the different places. Of course, you can wand the whole body in essence, unless you've got something unnatural in your body, in which case you don't want those bits because it's got heat as well. And so we, worked with thousands of people to bring that to Australia because it was really important to me that people would have self-healing tools in their own home. Given the events of the last few years, I really felt like going forward, people need things that they can apply for themselves in their own power. And that's been really my driving force with all of this, I feel.
Lovely. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
Well, we have a frequency device and it's PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic,
yes.
which is kind of similar to the frequencies of the earth, and the Schumann resonance is also a frequency of the earth. So it's so interesting how our ancestors had this technology of they just lived in the earth in connection. And the further away we've come from that, the more we have to return to it and find ways to integrate it into our crazy lives.
Mm. Absolutely. You know, it's interesting because we also have a foot spa, or I call it a foot spa. They've got some fancy name for it, but I like calling it it's a frequency foot spa, so no water. And
Oh,
it has terahertz and the PEMF in it. And if you get the high
wow.
end one, it's also got negative ions. And I have seen extraordinary results because it goes through the whole body. Now, some people can, really sensitive people can feel it moving up the body, basically. And so I just think it's extraordinary how, yes, we have the earth, and yet it's like we're superpowering those frequencies. That's how I feel it in my body when I use these things. Because, some people have said to me, well, why don't you just do it with your hands? And I'm like, I can. And it's going to take a lot longer, you know? Like this
Yeah.
stuff really amplifies and speeds up what's possible.
Well, you know why people use tarot cards or a tuning fork or a singing bowl as opposed to somebody just straight up reading you? And sometimes it's just the medium in between us and others that brings some clarity to the situation. Like I can do
Yeah.
energy work with my hands and I can feel and I see where the energy is. But once I use a tuning fork, it creates a distortion and that person can palpably hear it, whether or not they're conscious of it. Like, hey, did you hear how it changed and now there's no distortion anymore? It's because that energetic shift has already taken place. And I think it's just important for us to have these tools to validate some of the things that we on a deeper level know to be true.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you go back and you look at, the priestesses and the healing temples way, 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 way back in the day, they had tools, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that we're just going through a particular phase of which tools we have, and as we progress and increase our frequency, then there's going to be other tools become available to us as well.
Mhm. I love it. I love connecting the ancient and the ancestral with the modern and
Mm,
seeing how those stories, the oracles came through and how as a society and societies back then, we were able to receive so much from the
mm,
divine and channel that into our
mm,
realities.
mm. I have this feeling that a lot of the things that are coming through now are, in essence, given to us from maybe off planet,
Yes,
because
I've seen
I,
it.
yeah,
I've
it's,
seen it.
I mean, we're going to go there, right? We're going to talk about all the things because, like, when I look at the bioresonance scanner, for example, there's a strongly angelic energy that runs through
Yeah.
it. And having met the founder, I can feel that energy through him as well.
Wow.
And so it's very interesting when you start to like look at this really big picture. And then, of course, so it's kind of like the very practical to the very esoteric.
Yeah.
And all of it has a place.
Yeah, the med beds and the
Yeah.
holographic chambers that we can enter for healing, they're very similar to some of the new technologies that are coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I've had experience with an energetic medbed, and very interesting, actually. I was quite astonished at what was actually possible with it. And of course, even the ones like the terahertz ones, they do a lot of things that a medbed would do, but again, slower than a medbed, right? So you've got hands, which are cool and good if you've got nothing else,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have other things in the middle, and then you have medbeds, and yeah, it's really interesting. And in fact, the bioresonance scanner that we have, there is actually a version of a medbed that you can get. It's a lot of money, but through that company, that literally spins you. And they've also brought out, and this is next on my list of things to get because I'm always excited about the new exciting things,
Yeah.
But they brought out a thing called a hub, which you attach little things to your earlobes, you put a mask on, you have sound coming through. And I've had a try of it and it blew my circuits. One of the girls was watching me try it out. She's like, "How's that, Lisa?" And I was like, "That was wild." Because it was like I just had the most incredible psychedelic experience,
Wow.
basically. And
Wow.
she goes, "That's your brain." I'm like, "What?" And I didn't realize, but every person has a different experience. And it's very good for like removing addictions and things like that. So,
Wow.
like, because you're basically retraining all the neural pathways.
There's a
Through,
there's a hypnagogic light that I've used before. It's called a
oh, yeah.
Lucille light, and it does something to, because of the light and the flashing, it's subtle, but you can actually initiate these visions from using this light.
Mm.
So it's very much
Yeah.
of a journey. I journey inward a lot. I don't feel like it's necessary for me to have a device to do that. But some people that, that maybe were reliant on some kind of medication or psychedelics drugs, or they're trying to, find their way to that journey. And it does take a lot of
Yeah.
practice to visualize things. I think that's a huge part of the healing process, though, is that we can amplify the messages that we receive from the divine, from ourselves, our highest selves, and do with that what we will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I I don't know if I would use it for meditation as much as I would use it for recalibrating my brain. Because
Mm-hmm.
when I had the burnout, for example, I lost a lot of brain power there.
Yeah.
It really, like I could barely put a coherent sentence together.
Yeah.
So
And can you
it,
speak to that a little bit more? That burnout you mentioned, the
yeah,
adrenals?
what do you want me to say, talk about with it? Because it's like, I wrote a book about burnout.
Wow.
Living
Yeah.
beyond burnout because I wanted people to, because back then people didn't talk about it. It was like it was a secret if you had burnout. I mean, now it's much more openly spoken about,
Yeah.
but back then people needed to know that actually this is happening a lot and there's things you can do about it. Because I didn't actually know I had burnout until the third time, and then eventually a doctor named it, and I was like, "What?" Like I had no concept that's what was wrong with me.
So I actually don't believe that we have doctors using that term. Maybe that's a different thing in Australia.
Ah, so well, she she was probably on the, I don't know, more open-minded end of the spectrum. Let's just call
Yeah.
it that. And she tried to give me, tablets for depression. I said no, thank you. I read the side effects once, and I was like, I'm not taking those. But in essence, she gave me time off for
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I guess yeah, it's probably not on their list of approved
Like,
terms,
we might call it
but
adrenal fatigue. Is that familiar to you?
yes, yes, you could call it adrenal fatigue, but I believe there's a lot more to it. Like I
Yeah.
really look at it and go, it's a soul illness ultimately, you know.
Yeah.
And as with any illness in some ways, but with the burnout, I tracked it very clearly back to what I needed to change in my own life that would actually ensure it didn't keep coming back.
Yeah. And you just found that you were out of alignment or out of authenticity with what you were supposed to be doing, and were able
Um,
to.
I wasn't really meant to be working in the corporate world.
Yeah.
Capable as I was, good as the money was, all those things.
Yeah.
I really needed to be on my own path of creating.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, of course, that has, there's been a big shift from that point of view. And I made that shift very quickly once I worked out the picture. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I can do anything as long as I can see it as an art project.
Oh, absolutely.
Working with the body is an art project. I'm working on a performance, the aerial arts performance, and as stressful as some of that stuff is, it's just creating something beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that all of us need to live a more creative life,
Yeah.
because if that really is, the sole expression is your creative life, and creativity can come in many, many forms. I think a lot of people think it's just art, but it's really so much more than that. And I always say to people, well, when you bring love to everything, when you bring your creative essence to everything, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's making breakfast or sweeping the floor,
Yeah.
then you're going to have a different experience of life.
Yeah, totally.
Hmm.
Your light has to be on.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it does. Yeah, and I think to be well, your light has to be on in that sense. Like whenever things get a little wayward in my life, the first thing I always go back to is, well, how can I bring the energetics of creativity into whatever's there and going on? Because it always creates a shift. Can't always predict the shift it's going to make, but it always creates a shift.
Yeah, wonderful. And so I see in your video here you have a whale painting. Do you have some art?
Yeah. So there's a story that goes, well, there's a few stories that go with that painting, but I went to a thing called Art Jam earlier in the year. So we have a local, in one of the small towns, like in the hinterland of where I'm living now, there's an old butter factory that's big art, community art space. And they had like artists could go and be there for a week all together at once. And there was like 13 artists or something each week. And I thought, like, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a particularly great artist, but I thought it would be really fun to go and do that. And so I went just on the basis of I'm going to have an adventure, knowing that probably I would be the least capable artist there, and that it's good to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I went and I muscle tested, because they did it for like 5 weeks running. So I muscle tested which week and which area of like the layout to choose.
Yeah.
It was extraordinary. Like, I made new friends. I met friends of friends who I'd kind of met maybe once or twice, but hadn't really connected with on the art side of things. And people came to see what we were doing that we knew, and it was absolutely beautiful and really such generosity of spirit. This was what was interesting to me, is that people would look at what you would do and say, oh, I've got a colour you need for this. And the next day they'd bring you in their colour that you could try out,
Wow.
So there was this real kindness, and I had such a fun week, really just amazing. And so out of that week for me creatively, what came was, I think the second part to something I haven't launched yet, but I know what it is. And because I have a deep connection with the dragons, and what you can't see in that picture, maybe if I tip my screen up, you can just see the little dragon face at the very top, probably.
Oh, wow.
And that in all the paintings, the dragons came through. And I've had a connection with them for a very long time. So they gave me a very clear message as to why the painting, what the connections are, what I'm to do with these paintings. So I've had to move house since then, so it hasn't quite got to the top of the list yet, but it will very soon. And so for me, that was really interesting that week also, because one of my friends who was there for the whole 5 weeks, who was a new friend, she said that was by far the best week, the most generous week, where everyone really enjoyed each other. So it's interesting how, when you're drawn to something, the right sort of energies come together.
Yeah. And what are you meant to do with that painting at your new place?
Oh, well, first of all, I need to finish it because it's not quite finished. The whale needs a little more additions.
Yeah.
And but I've got an idea. It probably will be launched by the time you actually air this.
Yeah.
That it's like I can't spit it out. I'm going to write dragon letters for kids, so they can subscribe and receive a letter from the dragons and like a print of a painting each month.
Wow. Oh, that's so sweet. That's your true creative work, is channeling dragons.
Pretty much. Well, it's one piece of it. Yeah.
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 Wow.
Yeah.
one of my friends, her name's Tanya, we do workshops together. And we did a workshop on Zoom when we were first getting to know each other. And we were working with orcas and orca medicine. And so we
Yeah.
both use a little light language. We had singing bowls and rattles, and we just came in and received the transmission from the whales. And it was so powerful just for me, not being that this is something that I created, this is something that was wanting to create from spirit and receiving the messages from the whales. And this was back, it was almost a year ago in July. And there was this closure happening with, now we still have Neptune. Neptune is now in Aries, but Saturn in Pisces and everything kind of in Pisces. And there was a lot of stuff closing for people, and there was a lot of grief. And to be able to feel that connection with the water element and the creatures to help us through that, it was so beautiful. So I really believe in opening up those pathways, the divine and the animal beings.
Yeah. Well, the dragons have, they've been very clear with me for a long time that I was to write for them. It's pretty much a straight out instruction that, yeah, you'll be doing our writing for us. And
Wow.
I've gone in and out of it, and I haven't actually published really anything yet, except I have done some personal Dear Dragons letters for people, like adults, who, and that's always fun as well. But
I
yeah,
love
look,
that.
part of my it's just part of my reality that, you know, it's getting very close to the top of the list now, all the things, because there's fiction books, there's a whole lot of things to come on that side of things. Well, I always say fiction in inverted commas, because, you know, what's fiction, right? Who says dragons aren't real? You know.
Yeah. I think I have the opposite thing that I've been writing, and it's nonfiction because it's about my life, but there's some blurry things with channeling and other dimensions that, what is real if the work that you can do within those other dimensions can clear patterns and make way for new timelines? Who knows?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, like I've been all over the world and worked with the earth in many, many places. And the earth and the water, actually, because for me, the water is just as, if not more, sentient, you know, in
Yeah.
its own way. They have different ways, different frequencies. And like, I think we need to, I'm going to say, go back to that depth of connection with everything,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the truth of reality. And, you know, like I used to have a couple of guys on my Facebook who would be like, what are you talking about? That's not real, blah, blah, blah. You can't see that. And they'd be really, you know, interesting. Let's just call it that.
Yeah.
And so this one time I was like, do you breathe air? And this guy's like, yeah. I said, well, how? I said, because if you can't, you just told me if you can't see it, it's not real. And that was the end.
Yeah.
End of that whole, you know, months of basically abuse. And I did block him after that because I'd made my point. But and I
Mm-hmm.
just was like, I don't need non-believers to be, you know, ranting at me on my page. But it was
Yeah.
really interesting because, you know, we've come from this very, very limited space. Like the bottom of the barrel, I always think of where we've come from in these last, you know, few 100,000 years.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to then start to, there's just so many people now who are like tapping into, you know, well, we can call them the unseen realms, but they're actually seen by many of us in different ways.
Yeah.
And it's really quite exciting that, you know, we're becoming a frequency where there's less division, less separation, which is, you know,
Yeah.
thrilling, really.
Was there a moment for you that inspired seeing those realms where you awakened to that?
Oh, that's an interesting question. When I was a child, I was a very good astral traveler. So I I always had some capacities. I didn't know that's what it was at the time. I thought I was just having little adventures. And it was only, when I was an adult and I was reading about what it was, I was like, oh, that's what that was. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know. So I think I've always probably been a little bit on the multidimensional side, or a lot on the multidimensional side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in terms of having experiences, that has very much happened since I left the corporate world. I think in the corporate world, I was always talking about the elephant in the room without realizing that's what I was doing, much
Mm-hmm.
to every horror, because when there's an awareness that you haven't acknowledged as awareness, you think everyone else knows what you know, and then you realize they don't.
Yeah.
So that was always interesting. But when I was traveling a lot, like in Europe, for example, there's a lot of places that have time bleeds.
Mm.
And so I would be able to see 5 and 6 and 7 layers of time at once when I'd be walking down the street. And that was wild. Like sometimes I was like, what? Like it took a bit to really realize what my eyes was like. I was seeing this with my eyes open, which was pretty out there.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and I've seen, my dragon beings at times. I mean, I can imagine them, but also sometimes I'll see them,
Do
even see
you
them.
think it's one of those things where we're exposed to some kind of trauma as a child and then we're called to service in some way, such as we may be asked to feel
Mm.
things that are extrasensory or become more empathic?
Look, I think that's one path, absolutely. Was it my path? I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, because I had those, interesting experiences from such a young age. Like I'm talking, I was probably 4 or 5 when I was doing that astral traveling in the beginning.
Wow.
So I don't really know when all that started for me,
Mm-hmm.
and I look at the babies now, right? When you walk down the street and the baby like rips its head around to look at you.
Yeah.
And if I ever get on a plane, I will guarantee I will meet every baby on the plane because they all make their mothers come and see me. Now, I don't really know how that works, like,
Wow.
except that it's energy. So I feel like a lot of the babies born now are already in these multidimensional realms, and like one of my friends, I worked on her body a lot when she was pregnant. And then when her baby came, I was there like 24 hours after, and I was so excited because, like, they're just so beautiful when they're that tiny and new. And
Yeah.
I was holding him, and he was just giving me the most beautiful energetic downloads of where he'd come from.
Mm.
And, as a very young, I mean, when he got a bit older, he wasn't so cuddly and snuggly, but in those first, say, 2 years, every time I saw him, he absolutely knew that I was the person who had worked on his mum a lot.
Mm.
So he knew my energy already. So, look, I think that we're actually naturally this. I think trauma can activate some things for different people.
Yeah.
And that because I go to a craniosacral, biodynamic craniosacral guy who's amazing. Like the reason I go to him above everyone for bodywork above everyone else is because he gets all the multidimensional stuff.
Yeah.
So we've had the wildest conversations about things that have happened.
Wow.
And what I do know is that if it is, say, a past life memory, for want of a better word, that we're talking about, he can do the trauma stuff like the EMDR or whatever on my eyes, and there will be a charge that dissipates.
Yeah.
But whether that's creating the access or whether we already have the access to all of that, like I had a lot of wild stories before I met him,
Yeah.
and he's definitely helped put some coherence around some of those things. But I don't know that they all come from trauma, but because
Maybe not
like
trauma as explanation, but being called to service in some way that would require us to,
Like,
and not
yeah,
necessarily
if you
even
look at it from
have,
that point of view,
yeah, but activate our skills that are hidden that we are remembering.
mm,
And it's interesting
mm,
what you say about babies, because I think about all of the energy that's needed on this planet right now, and we're being sent some just amazing beings.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so really you're asking about the call to service. That, hmm. So I'm going to say that mine was, I'm actually going to say it was reactivated from via the burnout. Okay, because when I was young, like 14 or so, I was very interested in all these things. But of course, the joys of the corporate world and, young and I'm going to buy a house and I'm going to do all the things that you do in the world took me away from that path. Um, but I will say that there was trauma when I was about 14. I experienced a lot of bullying, and I started my healing journey back then. So I think it definitely can put you on a path to healing. People have different triggers. There's no doubt about that. There's lots of different paths to getting onto the path of the healing and whatever. And some of us are meant to then go on and do that for other people. And others actually meant to stay in those environments. Like some people I know, they do really well in those corporate environments, even though they're very heart-centered and whatever, because that's their path. And I
Yeah.
think really what we need to come to is what's the truth of our path?
Yeah.
And that's not, there's one thing that is your purpose and you must do it forever. I don't
Yeah.
believe in that. But I do believe that we have a journey to go on, and many different life experiences uh, can move us along on that journey.
Yeah.
And like for me, like for example, when we did the wands, that was really an important thing for me because it clarified, okay, I'm here to put self-healing tools in the hands of people.
Yes.
Like that was the particular tool was not as important as that's what I'm here to do. And really all my work now has this underpinning of healing. On the surface, it may look like a writing group or, some business coaching, but there is a very strong underpinning of healing. And when I say healing, it's not I heal you, I fix you. It is let's activate what's possible for you within this safe space. And that's a very different
Yeah.
approach, I think.
I'm right there with you. I don't
Mm.
like using the word healer to describe
No.
somebody who's a practitioner that's really facilitating you in your own healing process. And I think it's between you and yourself, the process that you're going through. And there's not much that I can do to change it, but just be there and show up and facilitate and help you remember your own tools. But it's very much more empowering that way, to just use our gifts to show people what they
Mm.
can see a little bit deeper. And then, they have responsibility, they have full transparency in it, and they can go through that process and walk that path. So I think
Yeah.
that's so lovely.
Mm. Yeah.
Is there
Mm.
anything else you want to say to our listeners? I know we talked about bioresonance. I don't know if there's anything more that you wanted to
Well, I
share.
didn't finish that, did I?
Yeah.
That's my brain, a little bit of the autistic ADHD neurodivergent stuff going on in there. Yeah, so with the bioresonance scanners, I think what's really interesting about those is yes, you can do a scan and it's going to show all the things going on in your body. But what's more interesting is that the whole point of bioresonance frequency is that it's pinging your body and your energy field to see what is in alignment and what is not. And then it's just showing you what the gap is so that then you can choose what you do with that. And I find that that is really, really helpful. And over time, you get to see more of the jigsaw puzzle. For me, I tend to be quite nonlinear and quite intuitive in terms of how, like, I'm not medically trained in that sense, but I've got a lot of knowledge in a lot of different fields and pieces. And so all the pieces kind of come together in this very intriguing way. And then what I love about it then gives you tools, frequency tools, to begin to shift, those gaps and make them either smaller or non-existent. It's interesting. Just last week, I've started some frequency support groups, basically for people, and the first one is on expanding courage, dissolving fear. And so what I did, because there's all tuning forks in this scanner, like there's amazing things, the tools in there, you've got all your homeopathics that you can imprint all your flower essences, you can even imprint essential oils, like you can do so much with it. And I've had it for a year, and I reckon I've barely scratched the surface of how it actually works, like, and that's not because I haven't been playing with it. I've been playing with it every day. And anyway, I made this playlist of tuning fork, different numbers, did some research, worked out that my target was to be able to people to listen to it and dissolve fear, for it just to go. Anyway, of course, I'm listening to it as I'm creating it, right? And literally all the fear in my body, because there was some there, because, I'm dealing with a couple of difficult things right now, all of that fear just went. Totally went. Like it just did not exist. And it barely came back for about almost a week. And then I've played it again, and then it's gone again. And I do believe that gap will get longer over time. So that for me was quite mind-blowing, that I could create this little...
What frequency dissolves fear?
Oh, I've put like 10 frequencies in there, one after the other.
Wow.
I've taken them on like a little frequency journey.
Wow.
And that's really interesting, actually, just to even see that was possible. Like, I looked at it from a physical point of view, like the kidneys hold fear, for example.
Yes.
And then I looked at it from, the nervous system point of view. And so I've looked at it from all these different perspectives, including the planetary frequencies. And so when you put all the different pieces together, it becomes a very whole experience, in the sense that it feels complete to the body and the being. Yeah, so very fun to play with. And I'm literally like, at night I lie in bed and I'm like, I wonder which one I should make next, because I'm like, oh, there's more to make now that I've worked out how to do this.
That's incredible.
It's really fun.
Yeah, it's like being a musician, you use the full spectrum of a song with all of the nuances in it, as opposed to just one frequency for one effect, which is how we do pharmaceuticals. One little pill for one little effect, as opposed to a myriad of herbs and foods and minerals and things that go into our bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'll ask you a question I ask everybody on the show, and that's how we can more fully tap into our liminal frequencies.
For me, a lot of it works through my connection with the earth.
Yeah.
Now, that is not the same for everyone. I want to say that, because some people will be like, doesn't work like that for me. No, you might be more star oriented. But for me, because I've had such a strong connection with the earth, like, my parents took us camping every other weekend when I was a kid. So we had a lot of earth time. We were never allowed to play inside. It was always get outside, which was great. I mean, not that was my natural space. I would take a book outside, but when I look back, it was a gift, because it really gave me that very deep connection. And so I can travel through all the dimensions through my connection with the earth. Or water. I've done it with water as well. So it really is about playing, I think, to see what works for you, because other people have taken me on different journeys, and sometimes it has been the sky, like the dragons. They came to me straight from the sky. They did not come from the earth originally. They do now, but they come from everywhere now. But originally, it was sky oriented. I remember it very distinctly.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything. And if you want to let us know where listeners can get a hold of you, I'll certainly drop links in the episode.
Yeah, just lisamurray.co. That's the easiest. And from there, you should be able to find all the things.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Gillian. Thank you for having me on your show.